Keynes, this is called transactions demand, this is speculative demand. That is, this is the chart. Money supply is related to, is a function, I'll put it this, it's an inverse function of R. So, it's like this. KY, so we're going to say money supply looks like this. And, I'll do this algebraically, but don't worry. MD, money demand, sorry, is K times Y minus some parameter A, that's irrelevant what it is, times the interest rate. This parameter will be large, because R is a small number. So therefore, when I plot that, notice it's a linear function. Supposing I had this. Supposing K is 0.15, Y is 100. If the interest rate was 0, let's say this is the money supply here, it is 12 billion. Then the intercept term right here of money demand, if the interest rate is 0, is 15 billion right here. So if the money was 0, the money, if like the interest rate was 0, the amount of money that people are holding is really high. The demand for money is really high. But as the interest rate goes up, the demand for money falls. Like that. This is the demand for money right here. Okay? And what that means is basically, when the interest rate is down, when the interest rate is low, everybody realizes two things. What you should do is hold money for two reasons. One simple reason is this. If you hold your money, you're waiting for the interest rate to go up. By the way, we know this because it's common knowledge. You can read it in the New York Times or the Globe and Mail or whatever occasionally. Companies like Apple have borrowed billions of dollars from the Federal Reserve at interest rates of like 0.5%. They're sitting on it at 0.5%. They know that the interest rate is eventually going to go up. It might take a year, it might take 2 years. If you could borrow, pay the interest on $1 billion at 0.5%, you're going to make a fortune when the interest rate goes to 2%. Because you could lend it out at 2% if you wanted to, and get 1.5% on $1 billion. Or you, instead of when you have to borrow to invest, you'd have to go out and borrow money. You've got it at 0.5%. Really, if you could borrow money right now, you'd do it and hold it and be ready to lend it when the interest rate goes up, which Bernanke suggested will in fact happen. Okay, because of course it's going to happen, as you're going to see. When the economy expands, usually the interest rate goes up. Okay, so at low interest rates, nobody wants bonds, they want money, right? And for another reason, they don't want bonds, because if the interest rate goes up, the value of your bond goes down. On the other hand, what if the interest rate was 10%? Say, right here. Say this was 10%, right here. Then now, people don't want to hold money. Why? I don't want to hold money if the interest rate is 10%. I want to lend it out and get that, right? And secondly, if the interest rate is high, the probability is that it's going to fall. So if the interest rate is 10%, I'm going to put my money in bonds. I'm not going to want to hold the money supply. I don't need money. I'm going to get rid of money. Buy bonds with it. And I'm going to get a 10% return, and then the interest rate's going to fall, and my present value is going to go up. I'm going to keep going. This, by the way, this financial thing here is flat. This is just straight up finance. And it's true. It's just the way it is. It's the way that market operates. So what do we got there? This is the demand for money, says Keynes. So now, notice, let's see. Supposing this is what, at this point, the interest rate is 10%, right here. Supposing the interest rate is this, right now. Okay, well, you know what we have? What we have is this. We have a difference right here between, at this point, with this interest rate of 10%, nobody wants money. But the banks, the money supply in the economy, which is controlled by the banks, is this. The banks have tons of money to lend out. Right? But people don't want money. What do you think the banks do? They don't make profit on money that's not earning interest. So money that they're not lending, they're not making a profit on. So what do the banks do? They lower the interest rate. Or another way of seeing it is, basically what happens is, you bid up, there's that extra money around, and so people are buying bonds, which means they bid up the price of bonds, which pushes down the interest rate. But the idea essentially is this. The interest rate falls to this equilibrium. Okay, like that. So we end up with this equilibrium. So then let's say now, this is the equilibrium interest rate in the economy. Right there. Now money supply is vertical because we assumed there's no excess currency in circulation and there's no excess reserves. That's why it's vertical. Otherwise it would be positive slope. We just did that to simplify the multiplier. Look what's going to happen. This is now going to be, say, 4%. Obama wants to stimulate the economy, wants to lower the interest rate. We'll see why in a minute. All right? Increases the money supply here by having the Federal Reserve increase reserves or whatever. Now notice, the Federal Reserve increases the reserves of banks. The banks try to loan it out, the money supply expands, but here's the problem. Here's the quantity demanded of money, and here's the quantity supplied. So the banks lower the interest rate until we have an equilibrium. The supply of money, quantity supplied of money is greater than the quantity demanded of money, and the interest rate falls to 3%. And that is the mechanism. Right? Everybody? Okay, now, let's do a little numbers for fun. These are the numbers. Here's the information I give you. Let us say the money supply in an economy, let's say the money demand function for an economy is 0.1y minus 500r. R is in the form of a decimal. And further, let us say y is, I got to give you a number, I'll say 120 billion. Okay? Then, and further, now I'm not, so that's what the situation is. So then I say to you, what is the equilibrium interest rate if the money supply is, let me see now, what should that money supply be? Let me just see. Okay, the money supply is 8 billion. Now then, what is equilibrium R? This is actually pretty simple. You guys can figure it out. Equilibrium R implies, where does that happen, by the way? Let's have a look. As if we didn't know, right, everybody? We know where equilibrium R happens. Where does equilibrium R happen? Where money supply intersects money demand. Where money supply equals money demand, like any other demand supply scene. So, we go there. Implies money demand, money demand, if I do it as a diagram, I usually have DM. And when I do it as numbers, I do ND, don't be confused. MS. Oh, this is simple then. This implies for us 0.1 times 120 minus 500R equals 8. What is R?
0.008 billion.
Sorry?
0.008 billion.
Okay. But not 0.008 billion. So it turns out R equals RK, I'll just put it up here like this. RK minus no, KY minus money supply divided by H. So it looks like this. 12 minus 8 divided by 500, which is 0.008. Right, everybody? Which is equal to 0.8%. The interest rate is 0.8%. Right? Now let's play around. Any questions on this? Okay, guys, what do you think? Now notice, by the way I did this, I want to be careful on it. It turns out when you draw, let's get rid of this, and we'll put here, our original equilibrium, here is 0.8%, which is approximately where it is right now. It seems ridiculously low, but that would be right where it was. This number here, oh, it's 12 billion. No, it's 8. And this number here, K times Y, is 12. Right? Okay, so there's our thing. Now, a thing to note is the demand for money. The slope here is determined by the interest rate. Everybody? But this intercept term here is determined by the given Y. This is Y0, right? So therefore, when Y changes, what happens to the interest rate? Supposing Y went up, what would happen to the interest rate? If the economy expanded and the money supply was the same, what would happen to the interest rate? All right, I'll take you through it. And this is important. If the economy expands, does the money supply change? Necessarily. No. You know that the money supply changes if the Bank of Canada changes it. The currency in circulation changes, or the reserve ratio changes, which means essentially it changes if the Bank of Canada changes it, and that has nothing to do with whether the economy expands or not. That's their decision. If the economy expands, Y changes, it affects the demand for money. You're students, you're making $20,000. You probably have $500 in your bank account. You graduate, you're making $60,000. You think you're going to have $500 in your bank account? No. As your income goes up, your demand for money will go up. Right? So let's look. We'll try it in our model. It turns out if the demand for money goes up, remember this is K. This is KY, right? KY0. If Y goes up, we move over to KY1, say, right? And therefore, this is important to know. The demand for money just shifts by the amount of the transaction demand for money. So we're going to have this now. This is money demand for money for Y1, everybody. So if the economy expands, the demand for money goes up. Notice. But if the supply of money doesn't go up, at this particular point here, we have a difference between the demand for money, the supply of money, and the quantity demanded of money at that point. Quantity demand is greater than quantity supply. The public wants money because they need it, i.e. to buy stuff, so they bid up the interest rate to this new equilibrium here, and this becomes our new interest rate. If we don't change